From Monterey on California's beautiful Central Coast, this is the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm Dennis Taylor, welcoming you to join me and my expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and John J. Responti, today and every week for the hottest, sweatiest show on the West Coast. And now, from Studio 1A, it's the Ringside Boxing Show.
Welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor, and we have got another terrific show planned for you today. During the second half of today's show, John Responti and I will be interviewing one of the best referees in the sport, Vic Drakulich, who is a veteran of 560 pro fights, including 51 world title fights. He was the WBC's Referee of the Year in 2010. He's been the third man in the ring for a fight of the year. And he's also a practicing attorney in Reno, Nevada, where he once won a $22.5 million settlement for a client. So he knows his way around a courtroom, too. And Vic Drakulich also has survived a very rare form of stomach cancer that kills almost everybody it affects. And he's doing fine today. So we're going to talk to him about all that. This is going to be fascinating, and it's coming up in just a few minutes. Our British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, is also coming up to talk to us about Liam Smith and Tyson Fury, and I forget who else. But he's got a good report for us today. That's coming up shortly. And we're going to talk right now about the week in boxing with our expert analyst. Travis Hartman is a professional boxer, boxing trainer and promoter from Osborne, Missouri, now living and training in Orlando, Florida. Rizwan Zahid is a boxing journalist from Toronto. And John J. Responti is chief lead writer for MaxBoxing.com and DogHouseBoxing.com. And John and I wrote the Amazon bestseller, Intimate Warfare, The True Story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward Boxing Trilogy, which you should definitely add to your boxing library. And we got John and Rizwan with us today, and not sure where Travis is, which is unfortunate because I was going to open this with a trivia question. Well, guys, what do Travis Hartman and Wladimir Klitschko and maybe Kelly Pavlik all have in common?
Come back. They've retired both a few times in their career.
Yeah, doesn't mean anything when they say they're done, right? Here we go again.
No, yeah, those press conferences they're getting less and less attendance, aren't they?
Yeah. Travis is going to be fighting a 45-year-old journeyman by the name of Daryl Cunningham. What do we figure out, John? Cunningham's 40 and 9 in his career.
40 and 9, yeah, and he's been doing well the last year or so. He's won I think 10 out of his last 11 fights. So the old guy's been doing pretty well. But remember, Travis said he's going to have about 6 weeks to get ready. So
yeah.
He's going to go to Detroit and fight, and hopefully he gets a fair shake. That's the only thing I always worry about. But he said he's going to be in super shape, fighting at 154 pounds, junior middleweight. So, go Travis, go. Yeah, absolutely. Pretty cool if he knocked off a guy with a name here. So, yeah, I wish he was here to talk about it. Damn you, Travis. Okay. Hey, meanwhile, the rumor, of course, is that Wladimir Klitschko has had enough of this retirement stuff, and he's coming back to fight Dillian Whyte at Wembley Stadium, maybe as early as April 13th. Vlad's 42 years old, and he's been retired since 2017 when he lost to Anthony Joshua at Wembley. Will he beat Dillian Whyte with no tune-up bout? Will he beat him at all, or is this a paycheck for him? What do you think?
Good question. I think he should be able to beat Dillian Whyte, but I wonder why he's coming back. I think, it seems like I was kind of reading about it. It seems like his personal life has obviously taken a few hits in the last year, and I think that's the major reason why he decided to come back, which is unfortunate. Him and his, fiance seems like they called it splits, and that can definitely play with a man's mind. And he's 40, but again, before that, he was early 30s when he was dominating. Actually, he was only up until he was late 30s. He was dominating the heavyweight division. So I think he thinks he can come back, but I don't want to see him back. I think he accomplished pretty much everything he could have accomplished. You don't complete dominant division for 10 years. If you think about both Wilder and Joshua, people have already seen, kinks in armor, and people have already seen Wilder in a close fight and arguably a lot of people thought he lost. That didn't really happen to Wladimir for that entire 10-year span. I understand the level of competition is different, but I don't think he's going to get anything by coming back because even if he does beat Dillian Whyte, I don't think anyone thinks at this age and being away from the sport from that long, he's going to beat Anthony Joshua or Deontay Wilder. And I know he's not a guy who he obviously keeps himself in shape, but he's not going to. Excuse me. He reminds me of. He's almost like Hopkins, I feel, where Hopkins might come back now and can probably still beat a lot of the top 10 guys in that division. But is he going to beat the top 3 or 4? No. And that's the point, for guys who, like Hopkins and Wladimir, who, dominated the sport for a better 10, 15 years, what's the point of coming back? So I really hope he reconsiders because, Wladimir is also maybe one of the smartest fighters in the history of like mankind. I'm not just talking about in the ring. I'm talking about away from the ring, like educationally wise. He was teaching, I think, at a Hamburg University recently, like an executive course that like CEOs are attending, right? There's way more things he can do outside of boxing. A lot of guys come back to the sport because they have nothing else. Wladimir has everything else, so I really hope he reconsiders because, all the criticism he's faced in his career for being chinny early in his career, then he didn't lose for 10 years. And I think I don't think he's going to get anything by coming back because I don't think he's going to beat any of the top 2 or 3 guys in the division. And if he's not going to do that, what's the point of coming back?
That's kind of where I am with it, John. On the one hand, well, first of all, he's also a grandmaster in chess. Man, that takes it ahead. He's a PhD, and so is his brother. His brother's also a grandmaster in chess. John, on the one hand, Wlad is such a class act that he's an easy guy for me to root for, and a successful comeback would be just an amazing story. On the other hand, the Klitschko years were arguably the most boring in the history of the heavyweight division, just because he was a mostly a dull fighter, I thought, and just controlled the fight and always won. What was it, 11-year winning streak or something like that? Do we really want to go back to that?
Well, I don't think it'll be like that, Dennis. Listening to you guys talk about it, I think that it's just, he's got a lot of things going on outside of boxing, but he just can't find something that is equal to the thrill of boxing. And you hear that a lot from fighters.
That's the old story.
Standing there, you can imagine when you're walking out to the ring and everybody's cheering for you. He's not going to get that in a classroom teaching a bunch of executives. They're probably staring at him with blank expressions on their faces or looking at him like, I already know this. So he goes there and that's the one place when he's in the ring or on his way to the ring, he gets all the adulation. It's his passion. And we've talked about that a lot, in the past on this show. And he's 42 years old, sure. And I think possibly that loss to Joshua probably has been eating him up. And his personal life, too. But the way he went out, he had Joshua so close to defeating him. And he was even winning on, I believe, 2 of the scorecards are tied or something. So he was really close when he got stopped. So that probably bothers him, his competitive nature. So there's a lot of things. So I'm thinking, I could be wrong, of course, but I'm thinking maybe this is a one-fight comeback to see how he does. If he blows out Dillian Whyte in 7 or 8 rounds, which I doubt, but if he does it, then he'll probably go on. But if he struggles and barely wins, or it's a draw, or even if he loses, that's it. That's the way I would think he's looking at it. But I think he just wants that one more time. He wants to go through it one more time. And I was thinking, Dennis, we got to have Jonathan Banks on, before, if this is confirmed. We got to have Jonathan Banks on as trainer because Jonathan is great, as we know, and he's honest, and he tells us a lot of great stuff. So I'm sure he's an ex-fighter. So he can probably explain it better than we can because none of us have ever walked down that aisle and had people cheering for us. But you can imagine. That's got to be such a thrill, and it's over so fast, and all you have is memories. I do. I believe that this is amateur psychology here. I think this is a one-time deal where he's thinking, I got to do it again. I got to see what happens. It could be disastrous. Dillian Whyte is there for the taking. I think I'm still not that impressed with him. He's pretty good. His defense is not so good. Every one of his fights is hard. Klitschko get that jab going. He can win a dull decision over him probably just by doing what you said, that bored us to tears all those years. Stay behind the high guard, jab him, don't get hit. But then again, he could get hit, and that could be it right then. So it's risky, but as an old, broken-down athlete, I can certainly understand why he feels like there's a hole in his life, in a sense. He misses it. He's got to try it one more time, and that's basically what I think it is. And it's certainly not for the money. If that man has any financial problems, I would be shocked. I think he's probably got the first buck he ever earned from boxing. As we said, he's an extremely intelligent man.
Yep.
So I just think he tried the other stuff, and it was fine. But he said to himself, you know what? I don't like what happened to me in the last fight. I was so close. I don't care if I'm 42. I'm in good shape. I've got to try this one more time and see what happens.
Here's another story that I posted for you guys yesterday, and 5 seconds after I posted it, I thought I heard Rizwan's eyebrows slam into the ceiling when he rolled his eyes. Kelly Pavlik says he's considering a comeback as a cruiserweight. That's what he said. I think it was yesterday on Joe Rogan's MMA podcast. He hasn't fought in 6.5 years. He's battled alcoholism, and hopefully he's conquered that. This sounds to me like a really bad idea and a quick payday or two for Pavlik, who probably has discovered that working for a living is less fun than becoming a world champion boxer. Riz, you're not on board with this at all, are you?
No. I mean, if you remember, he didn't leave the sport because he accomplished as much as he could have. He left the sport because pretty much, I don't know, I think he was partially fed up with the politics, but, excuse me, I think partially he just didn't have it anymore at that time. I mean, it's not like, if you were ever going to, whoever thought that when we saw the preview for Hopkins and Pavlik, and I still remember what Hopkins said. Hopkins said, I can't wait to see his face when they realize that they lied to you, and he's not realizing that this man is not 43 years old. And it's amazing how, like, this fight, I mean, I think that was at least 10 years ago now, right? Maybe 12. And the impact that it's had on Pavlik and his life. Like, this is a performance. I mean, who knows what would have happened if Pavlik went out and dominated, but yeah. I'm just saying, like, that performance has completely derailed Pavlik's life, not just career, but his life. He was never the same fighter after that. Sergio Martinez carved him up. And then after that, I mean, if you remember, that's all. Kelly Pavlik otherwise didn't really lose. He was still a good fighter. So I mean, if that's all, it just mentally, I think it kind of rocked him to his core. So I mean, and at cruiserweight, I mean, he was a big middleweight, and he kind of got away with it at the time. I mean, if you look at the middleweights now, I think Pavlik would fit in now with the middleweights. I mean, I think the division has kind of gotten bigger as it went along. So I don't think he would have a huge size advantage at middleweight. Definitely not a super middleweight. Definitely not a light heavyweight. And he's going to come back as cruiserweight. And we've seen pictures of him lately. It's not like he's packed on 30 pounds of muscle. I don't know who. And the cruiserweight division is not thin. I mean, I don't know who he's planning to fight, but just because Usyk's not there anymore. Do you think he's going to beat Dertikos or Gassiev or Bradis? Absolutely not, because all those guys are walking around at 220 and 220 of muscle, not what Pavlik's holding down. So I don't know if this was like a drunken conversation that Pavlik just had, and it was one of those things that people are talking about, and he's like, I don't remember saying that, but I hope that's the case, because honestly, he's not going to belong with any top 20 fighter, I think, at cruiserweight. He's been away for too long, but also he's left for the wrong reasons. Guys like Hopkins and Mayweather, they could come back in their sleep just because their skill level is that high, but also they're not guys who rely on power. They're guys who rely on IQ their entire lives, and Hopkins actually developed that as he got older. Hopkins was not a high, I mean, even if he was a high IQ fighter when he was younger, he knocked people out. He relied on defense and technique and all that stuff as he got older. Pavlik was never that guy. Pavlik was getting outmaneuvered. I mean, both of his losses, he was the younger guy by some years. I think against Martinez, probably about 5 years at least. Against Hopkins, maybe 10, 12 years, maybe 15, something, maybe 17. I think he was 26 at the time, right? It shows how great Hopkins is. But I mean, so if he was getting outmaneuvered and and was too slow to keep up with those guys, I don't know what he's going to manage to do at cruiserweight. I mean, you saw the interview you said on Joe Rogan's podcast. Did he look like he was in better shape, or is this just a pipe dream?
He's bulked up and he looks solid, but he was just sitting there at a desk too. But
So you didn't see the pudgy parts.
Yeah. John, you know, and you're welcome to weigh in on Pavlik too if you want. Canelo-Golovkin III looks like it's about to become a reality for May 4th. I'm excited about it. You know, I'm sure Travis will be excited about it. I think Golovkin's going to turn this one into a war, and it's the war we're hoping to see. And I think he's going to make it very exciting. You guys disagree with me on that, but what do you see happening in this fight, John?
Well, quickly about Pavlik, I would bet you, I remember somewhere, unless I'm imagining things, but I thought I read or heard that when he retired in 2013, he said that he had enough money to last for about 7 to 10 years. So here it is 6 years. So I think this is pretty much just, and I might be imagining that, but this is probably just a money grab the way I'm seeing it. I don't think he's going to bring any kind of power up to cruiserweight, and Riz said it all. I mean, there's too many good fighters up there. Years ago, the cruiserweights might have been a little thinner, but there are too many thin as far as talent. But there was one or two guys. Now there's quite a few fighters that are just, after you've been away this long, he's thinking, look, I get a tune-up and I get maybe 1 or 2 tune-ups in a big fight. I'll make quite a bit of money, and then I can go back to what I'm doing. It happens all the time. He's only 36, He retired when he was 30, so he's going to be 37 in April. So can understand it as a 36-year-old. You think, I'm not that old, but the division he's moving up to, man, it's really tough. Now, Canelo and Golovkin, well, Dennis, I hear you. Riz and I are pretty much, I think Riz even less so than I am. Obviously, it's a big fight. It's exciting, but the drawback, obviously, is Golovkin, who in a way, I feel bad for because of the first fight, he should have got the decision. I've watched that fight so many times, and I just can't see him. I know Travis disagreed with me, but I can't see him losing that one. And even the second one, he could have got it, even though I have no problem with Canelo getting it. He's older. He tried to rumble with Canelo, and he rumbled where he pushed him back a little in the last few rounds. But before that, it was Canelo who was backing him up. And so I don't know, his legs, he's older. A lot of people think it'll be a easier victory for Canelo, and I think it could be possibly. But, you know, Golovkin showed something in that second fight that doesn't get talked about very much. I did in the fighter of the fight of the year because I wanted people to remember this. He came back in the last few rounds. He put a hurting on Canelo in the last few rounds, and I still don't understand how he didn't get the 12th round, according to 2 judges, how he didn't win the 12th round. If he could do that for 12, but see, I don't think he can do it anymore, Dennis. That's the thing. I think Canelo is so confident right now. I don't think he thinks that Golovkin can't hurt him. If you think about it, he's gone 24 rounds with Golovkin. I don't even know if he's been buzzed once, to be honest. Maybe a slightly, and he's been hit with some pretty good shots, Canelo, and he's hit Golovkin with some good shots. So I don't know. I just don't think the third fight is the war that you think. I think it's more likely that Canelo wins it easier this time, not by stoppage, because Golovkin is so prideful and he's got such a great chin. But I think Golovkin will try his hardest, but I just don't see the. I think the second fight was probably the best. You're thinking Thriller in Manila, Ali Frazier. Mm-hmm. It's possible because of the pride and everything, but it's going to be up to Golovkin, and I don't know how farther he can dig. You know, there's a point where you dig, and then you hit the bottom. So in that respect, I mean, hopefully he proves us wrong. I mean, I would love to see him come in at Canelo as hard as he can, but you got to remember too, Canelo can box and move, and he'd tire him out. You know, Golovkin was really puffing. That's why it was pretty damn amazing that he came back in the last 3 rounds. You talk about the pride of a champion and the guts of a warrior. I mean, that was pretty amazing. So we'll see. But anyway, even saying that with those high standards, Dennis, it's still going to be a hell of a fight. So anybody who says, I'm not going to watch it, I don't believe. I mean, of course I'm going to watch it because these are 2 superior fighters. So in that respect, it's all good. And
the other one that's going to be announced on Tuesday, apparently, Riz, Khan versus Crawford, and I've said this before, but Amir Khan is one of the, for me, one of the best boxers in the world when he's vertical. But he inevitably seems to make a big mistake in each of his big fights, and he gets hit hard. And when he gets hit hard, he tends to go down, and that's what I expect against Crawford. But until it does, man, he's always a problem for his opponent, and I think this is going to be a really fun fight for as long as it lasts. Are you looking forward to Khan versus Crawford?
I think any fight with Khan is intriguing, and just because I think he causes a lot of stylistic problems, but I think there's usually inevitable that he loses focus for a second, and then he gets hit. I mean, I think if you look at all his losses, I don't think he was losing any of those fights. I think against Canelo, I know a couple of judges had Canelo ahead, but watching that fight, I thought Khan was actually schooling him. He was making him miss.
Oh, yeah.
And then Canelo got a little closer, and obviously Canelo landed. But I mean, that's, you know, for a guy who's considered a little chinny, he's moving up pretty much 2 divisions at that point. Mm-hmm. That was not really a surprise to anyone. And then against Danny Garcia, he was dominating, and then he got caught. Against Lamont Peterson, most people thought he won that fight. You know, Prescott obviously was the first round, so that's completely different. But you know, for the most part, he's been winning all these fights before he loses. But the big thing I noticed with him, and I've seen it twice actually. I've seen it that the way he goes against, he fights the level of his competition. Against Canelo, the first 3 rounds was probably some of the best work I've seen him done in his entire career. He was disciplined. He was, you know, he was not getting greedy. Lands a shot, moves out of the way, makes Canelo miss. But then against guys like Sam Vargas, he fought earlier this year. I've seen Sam Vargas fight. Sam Vargas is a local guy, and you know, tough guy and all that. But that fight, like that's not a guy Khan should ever struggle with. And Khan had him down, I think, twice in the second, and then he got knocked down himself. And he almost he looked like he was, I wouldn't say on the verge of being knocked out, but he was badly hurt. And that just shouldn't happen, right? Like, not against a guy, you know, Sam Vargas is a tough opponent, so he's secured some decent fights in his career. He fought Danny Garcia, fought Amir Khan. You know, he's been in some decent level fights, but you know, Khan should never struggle with a guy like that. But we saw that before too. Khan struggled with Julio Diaz, right? Julio Diaz at that point was pretty much done, knocked Khan down. Khan got up and managed to secure a victory. Maybe it's a thing when Khan fights in England. I think, you know, some fighters really like fighting at home. For some of them, it just puts a whole lot of pressure on them. They cater to the crowd, and that's why Khan in America always seemed like almost like a different fighter in some ways. He was always fighting on neutral ground, and he was able to, you know, be a smarter fighter. So maybe in that regard, New York is better for him. He's fought a couple times in New York before. He fought Paulie Malignaggi in New York. So I don't know. I don't think Khan has anything to lose here, but it's interesting that he chose Crawford over Brook, and because I don't think he's getting more money for Crawford. But like, you know, going back to guys like Wladimir Klitschko, it's just a competition in these guys. I think the way Khan looks at it, Brook's a big guy, as we saw when he fought Golovkin rather at middleweight. That, you know, he's a big guy who trains to make weight, so he has a good amount of power. Crawford, on the other hand, has moved up. Crawford's skills are great, but Crawford, let's face it, at welterweight, has he really knocked down or hurt or knocked out anyone that you would say, wow, he's an A-list puncher? I wouldn't say so. And I think Khan's obviously betting on a good amount of experience. And you know, it kind of goes back to, you know, there's a few fights like this where you're like, this fight should not be happening. And it turns out to be a lot closer than people think. And, you know, Morales had this when he fought Maidana like years ago. Remember when that fight was made? People thought, I mean, this was when Maidana was coming off a loss against Khan, but he was, you know, he's a scary force. And Morales just said, I see something. And people are like, well, what do you see? And then Morales made that as close of a fight as you could possibly get. So maybe Khan's looking at the Crawford fight in that way. Maybe he sees something that he can expose. I'll say this: has Crawford ever fought anyone as fast as Amir Khan? I don't think he has.
I don't think so.
And arguably, I'll say this: I mean, Crawford has always passed the eye test for most of us. I don't think Crawford has had a guy at this level ever on his resume. Even with Khan, I think being well past his best days. Now, that being said, Crawford might blow him out in 3 rounds. I don't think that's inconceivable. But it wouldn't be surprised also to see Khan really put his skills on display and really understand, again, because he's not fighting at home, which I think is an advantage to him. He's not fighting a guy who I'd say is a great puncher, at least not at this division, because, again, we've seen, Khan has fought as high as 155, and I think we're going to see Khan more disciplined, and I think he understands that this is it. This is kind of the last big fight. He's been itching for a big fight for a while. He tried to get Mayweather and Pacquiao, and neither of those happened. So he fought Canelo with a massive risk, and it backfired, obviously. But I think he's using that to try to get, to try to maneuver himself into a big fight. And I think this is it. And I think he never thought this kind of opportunity would come, because I think he understands that a win over here, is more significant, I think, in career and transcendent legacy than a win over Brook. And I think he his skill level, again, Crawford's never seen anything like this. Again, that doesn't mean Crawford's not going to win. That doesn't mean Crawford won't, and I'm not even going to say Crawford won't win easily, because, again, Crawford passes the eye test to us. But it's an intriguing fight, as is any fight with Khan. Unfortunately, though, if Crawford does win easily, it doesn't tell us. This fight won't tell us anything about Crawford. Nothing positive, at least. If Crawford loses some rounds and doesn't look good, and then he gets a win, there's just going to be criticism on him, and no one's going to say anything positive about him. If Crawford blows out Khan, I still don't think we're going to, I'm not going to look at that and say, well, I learned something new about Terrence Crawford. So for Khan, this is actually, there's no risk here. It's rare that arguably the bigger money guy, which is Khan, there's no risk for him. It's just, it's a win, or if not, I can always fight on the local circuit a few more fights before I retire. But it's interesting that Crawford, this is the biggest name that Crawford has fought, and I think they're almost forced to take a fight like this, because no one wanted to see him with another, Jose Benavidez or guy just like so overmatched skill-wise that, so for Crawford, this is a very high-risk, low-reward kind of fight.
Interesting. John, break it down for us. Are you excited about this fight, first of all?
Yes, I am, because I actually think Crawford will lose a few rounds. I think Khan has, obviously, we were just saying, Khan has that ability. He fights the top guys. He fights Canelo. He wins rounds. He was winning against Canelo when he got caught. He gets careless. I was sitting here listening to Riz breaking it down so well and thinking about when the number of times I went to the camp and watched Khan spar, and Virgil Hunter would be yelling at him, "You're keeping your head up there too much." That's what always happens. He's got his chin out there, and somebody catches him. When he's really focused, he feints a little bit more, and he's so quick. These guys can't touch him, but I think he likes the knockout, and that's when he gets caught. And if he stays focused, I won't be surprised if 4 rounds into the fight against Crawford, he's won 3, because we've seen Crawford before lose rounds. We saw him against Gamboa lose rounds. We've seen him even against, I can't think of his name, he lost some rounds. But then he comes back and wins. He adapts. He'll switch to southpaw to confuse Khan, and then if Khan makes a mistake, bam. So it's going to be very intriguing, and Amir Khan is one of those guys that his talent just blows you away as far as foot speed and hand speed and all that. So Riz is right, that word that he used, intriguing. Very intriguing, this fight. It might not be what a lot of people want, but Khan is bigger than Crawford. He might even be stronger, maybe not, but he's so fast that he's going to show things to Crawford that Crawford hasn't seen in the ring before, so that ought to make it really fascinating to watch. And like I said, I can see Khan winning some rounds. I can see the fight being very competitive, but we know what's going to happen when Crawford clips him. What happens now? It's possible that since Crawford is moving up and he hasn't shown explosive power, we always knew Canelo had power. So when he starched Khan, nobody was surprised. Knocked him out where he didn't even move. When he went down on his back. I don't think, obviously, that Crawford hits as hard as Canelo. So Khan might be thinking that, too. Look, this guy can hit a little bit, but I don't think he can knock me out. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. But Crawford's got that grit that I don't think Khan has. He's going to, if he's losing or whatever, he's mean in there, as we know. And that's not just meanness. That's just competitive. He's ultra competitive. He's going to find a way. He's going to get inside. He's going to start pounding on Khan. And then he's going to hit him in the chin, and maybe more than once, like 3 or 4 times. Boom, 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 boom. Then we'll find out. But and even with if Crawford wins by, like, say, 11th round stoppage, I don't necessarily think I'll criticize him, because I think we forget sometimes how talented Khan is. He's not an easy out for anybody. Now, if Crawford blows him out in 2 rounds, catches him early and knocks him out, we're all going to say, well, Khan was finished and all that, and Crawford will get some credit. But Riz is right. This is a high-risk, low-reward fight in a sense, but not where I'm coming from. I see it as more of a reward, because Khan is not an easy win as far as he's only lost 3 times in his career. He's so fast that Crawford will have problems with him. I don't care. Khan will give anybody problems. I don't care how good you are. Look what would he have done with Golovkin if he just moved around? I mean, Golovkin would have caught him eventually, but for a while it would have been very competitive. So that's the thing you get with Khan. So if you beat him, I think that's a good win. And Crawford has been, he can be hit. So I think this fight really might surprise Dennis. I think it might be a much more competitive, definitely intriguing, compelling, but I'm not going to come out and say Khan can win it. I think he could win it. Chances are slim, but I wouldn't be completely shocked if we're 10 rounds into the fight and it's anybody's fight. I wouldn't be, because of Khan. If Khan is there, if he's focused, like Riz said, he's fighting in America. I think that was an excellent point he made, that fighting in America, he seems to fight better than when he's in England. If he's 10 rounds in and we're right there and where everyone's discussing, well, what do you have? How do you have? Who do you have winning? I wouldn't be shocked, because Amir Khan, as we know, he can fight. He didn't have that weak chin or whatever it is. That guy, he's got all the skills in the world. So I think the fight's going to be a really good fight, Dennis.
Okay, John, let me let you lead off with this one here, since Riz got to break down the other one first. What are the chances that Adrian Broner could upset Pacquiao on Saturday, especially in the light of the fact that he's repeatedly been in the headlines recently for legal problems, and there are reports, I think just this week I was reading about it, that he's been winding down at Florida strip clubs after a lot of his daily training sessions down there. What do you expect to see from this fight?
Well, he's got a chance, of course, and I'll admit I watched one of the documentaries on All Access, and he says a lot of the right things. And he says he's a fool, and he needs his trainer Cunningham to keep him motivated in the training camp. And it's hard to tell. The guy, you just can't figure out how serious he really is. Has he really learned anything? He said when he was sitting in jail, he said, "Well, I'm going to really come out and do something in boxing this time." But it's just hard to believe him, and it's frustrating, because he's got some talent, and we all know that. We thought he was the second coming of Mayweather a number of years ago. If he had stayed at 130 pounds, he'd have been champ for quite a while. But he eats himself out of that division, out of most divisions, so quickly. So he's in a sense, he's an enigma. He's never busy enough, which drives me crazy in fights. He doesn't throw enough punches. So to beat Pacquiao, he's going to have to try to jab him to keep him a little off balance, and he's got to obviously be more busy, because even a 40-year-old Pacquiao is going to come right at him and be throwing punches, and he's probably going to have to eat 8 or 9 before he throws one. Now, what I see happening is if he can survive, I'm talking about Broner, he can survive, which I think he will. I think he's proven that he's got a good chin. Freddie Roach, of course, is saying that Pacquiao is hitting hard. He says the same thing every time before. Pacquiao is hitting harder than ever. He finally broke that no KO string when he fought Matisse, speaking of Pacquiao, last year. So he's hit. We know he hits hard. It depends on Broner and what Broner is there. If Broner is really as motivated as he's talking about, and I read the same thing as you about the strip clubs, and that wouldn't surprise me about Broner. And I just think some people said, well, what's the big deal? If he's done training, he's hanging out at strip clubs. Well, the problem is there's so many things at strip clubs. There's booze and there's women and there's all these things that he doesn't seem to be able to stay away from. So it's not good. I don't care what anybody says. He should be, getting his rest and all that kind of stuff. But if he somehow And as far as all the distractions, Dennis, I think his whole life is a distraction. So I don't think that will be a big deal. As far as all the legal stuff, he might have grown up a little bit in the last few years, but obviously not much. He's a train wreck still and all that, and he keeps getting all these chances, so it's frustrating. Can he beat Pacquiao? Yes, he can. He's younger. He hits hard. We know that. He could catch him. Will it happen? I don't think so. I think Pacquiao still has enough left, and he's looking at that mythical rematch, which I guess isn't mythical, with Mayweather. He wants that big payday. He wants that huge payday. Can't blame him. I mean, that's the most money he can get. Stay away from the young guns, fight Mayweather one more time, and then go back to the Philippines and feed the homeless and all those wonderful things that he does. I think Pacquiao wins the decision, but if Broner can get it, if Broner can do what Jeff Horn did and get real physical with him, throw him around, which I don't think he can because he's not really bigger than Pacquiao, maybe an inch taller, but he probably is stronger, but I don't think he's that physical, Broner. He just kind of stays on the outside and likes to counter. If he can hurt him or do something like that, Pacquiao, he could win, but I think Pacquiao's going to win. I see him winning by decision.
Riz, there are still guys out there, I think a couple fighters, I think Malignaggi might have been one of them, who still thinks Pacquiao is one of the top 5 or 6 guys at 147. Where are you on that, and what do you think about Pacquiao-Broner?
I definitely know he's one of the top guys at 147. Just because, the fact that we're debating that Broner could beat him, and we know where Broner stands in that division, I think that kind of answers everything for us. But that being said, it was a surprise to see him sign with PBC, considering a lot of people are still complaining about, they're not getting fights with PBC and all of this. So who does he fight? I think it's very possible that he fights the winner of Spence and Garcia. Just because Keith Thurman's not fighting, I don't think he's fighting anyone with the pulse anytime soon. He's going to have a few tune-up fights before I think he even considers, fighting Errol Spence. So that being said, maybe Keith Thurman and Pacquiao is a possibility because Spence and Garcia Errol Spence and Garcia have a fight coming up, and I think that's on pay-per-view. And I believe, if you have Keith Thurman fighting Pacquiao, that would be a pay-per-view fight, and that way Thurman and Errol Spence each become kind of a pay-per-view household. So even if that fight is taking longer than I think we would anticipate, I think we'd be fine if that's kind of the way it's built. At least you're fighting big names and quality opposition on the way. Obviously, this is pending that Pacquiao beats Broner, but I don't view Pacquiao as a top threat at 147. I'm wondering why he's fighting still, and I think, personally, I just think the answer is money. We've heard there's a lot of, I believe, unconfirmed stories that he's been, he's lost a lot of money through massive gambling debts, and that's why he was almost forever in bed with Bob Arum, because Bob Arum kind of bailed him out literally and figuratively a few times. So I don't know if that's the reason he's still fighting, but I think, does Broner have the ability to beat Pacquiao? Absolutely. Broner has always had a lot of talent, but that talent fades. Talent fades when you don't, maintain it, and you're not going to maintain it when you are morbidly obese and struggling to make weight and being arrested and just all these kind of things. It just that doesn't work. So I think Pacquiao should still win. I wouldn't be surprised if Broner pulls it off, because Broner's always had that potential. But I think the inner, we were talking about Crawford, and he has that different gear. He has that dog in him. I think Pacquiao does too. Pacquiao's always been he's been a fighter. He's a fighter in every sense of the word. Despite, questions of who he's been matched up against and all that, and we have obviously different opinions on, quality of opposition and all that, but no one's ever doubted his willingness to make things a fight. And I don't think he's going to, if he is getting, outclassed a little bit, I don't think he's going to be just sitting back and letting it happen. I think, Broner's never been a guy who and this is a big difference I've noticed, with the comparisons to Mayweather over the years. He's never been a guy who moves his feet well. In fact, he doesn't move his feet at all. He's just always there. He relies on head movement. And against someone like Pacquiao with that much experience. And Pacquiao's still pretty damn fast. It's just not going to work. And eventually he's going to get hit. And then I think he'll go into his shell, and then he'll throw, a punch every 6 rounds and expect to win, and then make a stupid post-fight presser and then be arrested the next week, and then we'll be discussing the Broner Wars again. So I think it should be a very comfortable win for Pacquiao, and let's face it, Pacquiao's still a major household name, and I think that's why it's a big PBC signing. But I think this will determine how far Pacquiao's, like, where he's going in his career. Is he going to be that old veteran who's going to try to fight the young guys, or is he kind of going to just fight B-level opponents for a few more fights and then call it a quits? This fight will help determine that answer to that question.
This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor, and we're talking to our expert analysts, John J. Responti and Rizwan Zahid. John, we want to congratulate our local fighter, Ruben Villa IV, from Salinas, California. He went to 15-0 on Friday with what I thought was a real impressive showbox debut. He won every round on all 3 scorecards against a Colombian named Ruben Cervera, who was 10-0 with 9 knockouts. Ruben is not a big puncher at age 21, but, man, this kid is a masterful defensive fighter, and that's the kind of style he learns as part of the Garcia boxing stable. And Cervera, who, obviously he had some skills, but nothing to match Ruben. He swung and missed on 88% of his punches that he threw on Friday night. How often do you see something like that? What kind of future do you see for Ruben Villa IV? Can a slick defensive fighter who doesn't knock people out become a star in this sport?
Well, unless he gets some kind of a massive personality too, and he seems just like and you've interviewed him, Dennis, and yeah. I'm not going to say seems. I'm sure he's a really nice kid.
A gentleman.
He is. That doesn't surprise me at all. There was some criticism online that I saw about him that they weren't impressed, and I was thinking, how could you not be impressed? I watched the fight because I have only seen Ruben a few times, so I wanted to see him. This was supposedly his hardest test, and he passed it with flying colors. He is what he is, and he said that he wants to exit the ring when his career is over with the same thing that he started with, and that means his brains. He's not there to get, and that's his style. But you know how boxing is. I mean, listen to what we were just saying a little while ago when we were hoping that Golovkin and Canelo is a war. When guys fight a war, that means they're pounding on each other.
Yep.
Ruben could get into the, I got the impression, though, watching that fight, that if he fights somebody that really pushes him, he's going to fight, because he kept getting warned by his corner, don't get careless. Because Cervano could punch. He had a right hand that he was winging all night long, and he hit Ruben a couple of times with it. Didn't bother him a bit. He rolled with it, or he even got clipped pretty solidly a few times. Didn't bother him a bit. So I think Ruben's got that fighter dog in him. So we might say that now, but I can see him getting into some firefights. And he's not a big puncher, but he's a very sharp puncher.
Sure is.
And he's going to cut. He's going to cut guys. He's going to wobble guys, because he wobbled Cervano a couple of times. So becoming a star, though, it is so difficult when you're not known as a puncher. You have to add a little bit more to your game. You got to beat all the guys. Like Andre Ward. We never knew him as a puncher, but he had so much in his game that he was able to beat guys with his brain, with his inside game. So, but he never really made the big, massive money. He only did pay-per-view at the end of his career, and those weren't exactly big hits. So I just hope that he doesn't worry about it when some people online are, I'm not impressed, he doesn't punch very hard. He's got to be himself, and he's with the right people. You know better than anybody that Max and the Garcias are going to remind him about his defense, and I don't really think he needs to be reminded. I think he accepts what he is, and I enjoyed it. I watched the whole fight, and I was impressed. The way he uses angles, I mean, not like a Lomachenko, but he's very technical in there. We got to get it out of our heads sometimes, and I'm talking to all boxing fans that, rock'em sock'em robots. It's fun, but you got to admire a guy too that can do the technical part of the sport that's so difficult, the spinning and the moving and the shifting and hitting a guy when he doesn't expect it. That takes talent. And Ruben's got it. So I was impressed. I hope the boxing fans keep watching him as he's moving up. And he's 15-0 now with 5 knockouts. Big star. Might be a difficult for him, Dennis, but hopefully that doesn't matter. He'll be a star. He'll win a title at some point, and that'll be fine. He doesn't have to be a big superstar. Let him just be what he is.
Yeah, I asked him last week when we interviewed him whether he's going to have to learn how to become a smack talker, because he is not that. And he basically said, it's just not in his DNA, not how he was brought up. So, a big mouth helps you become a big star in boxing.
It does.
Look at Teofimo Lopez.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
That's one of his assets, really. And Ruben's never going to be that. So he's got some challenges ahead of him. Plus, Riz, you were saying, he's going to probably have a hard time getting fights if he evolves to be too good. He's going to have a hard time getting fights with some of the big guys. Yeah. He's not a big draw. So, and also, Riz, in the main event of that show, a guy Ruben Villa beat in the Junior Olympics when he was 15 years old, Devin Haney, dropped in decision this guy Zolazani Endogeny. Haney's just 20 years old. He's now 21-0 in the lightweight division. A lot of people think he's going to be a world champion before the end of the year. Some people think he's got pound-for-pound list potential. How do you like Devin Haney?
Everything I've seen about him seems pretty good so far. But that being said, I think it's really early to be discussing pound-for-pound implications. I mean, he's still very young. And, how many times have we seen guys like Abner Maris were, always on the top pound-for-pound list? And then here comes Johnny Gonzalez, and it just, nothing's ever looked the same. And that's what happened. So it's very early. I mean, we talked about Erickson Lubin about this last year? And he runs into one punch from a Charlo, and boom, now everything's kind of derailed. So I think it's okay for us to be a little patient. Everything we've seen about him, though, he fits the bill. And even though he's not a pure knockout artist, he has the threat of a punch. And I think that's a big difference between some guys. He doesn't have to be a knockout puncher to be able to, to hurt the other fighter. I think that's the difference here. So everything we've seen about him seems like, he has the goods, but you don't want to rush a guy just for the sake of rushing him. I think if he's ready, and he's starting to look ready, I can see him challenging for a title at the end of the year. But again, challenging for a title and, being in major title fights are two drastically different things. But I think this is going to be a big year for him. I think this is where he's going to go from prospect to contender, and who he's matched up against will really tell us that.
All right, great insight, as always, from Rizwan Zahid, John J. Responti. These guys are our expert analysts, and they rock the house every week, along with Travis Hartman, who couldn't make it today for some reason. Thanks, guys. You guys have a great week.
You too. Take care, guys.
All right. Hey, let's give you guys a heads up about next week's featured guest on the Ringside Boxing Show. It's going to be Keith Thurman, who's going to end a 22-month absence from the ring on January 26th. That's a week from Saturday, when he fights Josecito Lopez at Barclays Center. Josecito Lopez, the Riverside Rocky, I think he's won 6 of his last 7 fights, something like that. He's not regarded as being quite in Keith Thurman's class, which is probably why Keith Thurman's picking him for a comeback fight, but he always brings it, so that should be interesting. And Keith Thurman, we've had him on the show 2-3 times before, and he's always outstanding. So that's next week's featured guest right here on the Ringside Boxing Show. You don't want to miss that. Our British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, is up next. Talk about Liam Smith and Dereck Chisora, Tyson Fury. And then John J. Responti and I will be talking to Vic Drakulich, veteran of 31 years, 560 fights, 51 world title fights as a pro referee. He's also a top-notch attorney in Reno, Nevada. All that is straight ahead, so stay with us here on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Oh, boy, is this great!
If you like the Ringside Boxing Show, you're going to love the website, ringsideboxingshow.com.
What are you doing? Hi, I'm Dennis Taylor, host of the Ringside Boxing Show, where since 2008 we have been continuously sponsored by Garcia Boxing, the first family of the Sweet Science on California's beautiful Central Coast. Trainers Max and Sam Garcia and ring strategist Dean Hamilton are regarded among the most knowledgeable in the game. And Kathy Garcia, who manages all Garcia boxing fighters, is renowned for her integrity and career guidance, having taken 2 boxers to #1 world rankings. Together they comprise one of the most respected teams in the sport. Learn more by calling 831-261-3214 or send them an email at garciaboxing25@aol.com.
Hi there, it's Paul McLaughlin with your weekly roundup of everything going on in the UK boxing scene at this moment. So Liam Smith, brother of Callum and Paul, has agreed a 3-fight promotional deal with Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. The 30-year-old Liverpudlian, a former WBO super welterweight champion, has linked up with Hearn after amicably parting company with Frank Warren and Queensberry Promotions. He will make his debut for Matchroom Boxing in Liverpool on March the 30th. Now, Smith claimed the WBO belt with a 2015 knockout victory over John Thompson, making 2 successful defences before his reign was ended by a stoppage loss to Saul Canelo Alvarez. So we caught up with Liam and asked him how he feels Eddie can help him.
I just think he's a little bit more like, I can speak to him kind of like I speak to, I'm not saying exactly my brothers, but I'll have a little bit more of a conversation with him. I'm more of a say opponent-wise and stuff like that. He's got the designs here, and also he's got a lot of medicals on board, which is easy to make. I think Frank's got a load of fighters now. I think he's matching them all together, which is, it's good, and the big domestic fights are always good. But again, you look at Williams, you look at Heffron, just fought for the British title. I was British champion in 2000. I was over 5 years ago in theatre. I don't want to be fighting for a British title again. No disrespect to a British title. I should have won in that piece, but I haven't. But my goal now is to become world champion, be more active and see if I can become world champion.
Now, next up, Dereck Chisora is still hurting after his rematch defeat to Dillian Whyte, but he intends to fight on, says his long-term trainer, Don Charles. Chisora had earned a lead over Whyte from 2 of the judges until being deducted a 2nd point in the 11th round, and any debate about a decision was rendered meaningless when Whyte then delivered a fight-ending left hook in the O2 in December. After undergoing medical checks, Chisora met with Charles to discuss his career, and the 35-year-old heavyweight has dismissed any thoughts of retirement. And finally, talking of heavyweights, it promises to be a big year for Tyson Fury after his stunning comeback fight at the end of 2018. So what does he have in store for us? A fight with AJ, possibly?
I've already beaten Wilder, so that's one now. I'll do the same to Joshua if given the chance, but I don't think it's going to happen. I'm sorry to disappoint sports fans, but Joshua, even with 2 hands in each hand, could never beat Tyson Fury, and they know it. They know that. They're not silly. And it's a business as well, so they're not going to take the fight. Simple as. They may say they're going to take the fight and talk about it and then fight somebody else, like they keep doing, but that's ain't going to happen. So I'm not overly graphic at all.
Well, that would be a fight that everyone would love to see. Right, that's your lot from me for this week, guys. I'll be back next week with some more boxing updates on the UK scene. In the meantime, gloves up and protect yourselves at all times. Back to the studio.
We'll do that, Paul. Terrific stuff from Paul McLaughlin. Thank you, Paul. You're listening to the hottest, sweatiest show on West Coast radio. If you like what you hear, do us a solid. Tell your boxing friends about us. Post our show on your social media sites and help us grow. This week's featured guest is up next. We will be back in 1 minute with referee Vic Drakulich.
I'm Dennis Taylor, co-author of the Amazon bestseller Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy. Writing this book was a labor of love for John J. Responti and myself. We enjoyed every minute of the process and considered it a privilege to tell the tale of one of the most electrifying boxing trilogies in the history of this sport. Intimate Warfare traces the collision course of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward from their earliest days through their 3 epic fights, as well as the aftermath of this great rivalry, which culminated in one of the greatest friendships in boxing. Intimate Warfare has received a 4.5-star rating from readers, and was endorsed by Hall of Famers Harold Letterman and Joe Cortez and two-time Trainer of the Year Virgil Hunter. Our foreword was written by Ray Boom Boom Mancini, another one of the greatest blood and guts fighters of our time. Get your copy today at Amazon.com.
Welcome back to today's Ringside Boxing Show. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responti, and today's featured guest is one of the top referees in boxing, a guy whose pro career began in 1987 and is still going today, 31 years later, more than 560 bouts by my count. Vic Drakulich works most of his fights in Nevada, and he's also been practicing law there for quite a few years, and we are betting he's got a lot of good stories to tell us today. Vic, welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show. Thanks for making some time for us today. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Hey, Vic, you've been the third man in the ring for about 3 decades now. How have you changed and evolved as a referee? What have you learned, and what kind of advice do you give to young guys who are just starting out?
What I tell the younger guys is that they have to really hone their skills first on the amateur level, and I refer them to local amateur programs on a regular basis, telling them to start from the bottom, being just assistants to the ringside, and eventually work their way up through judging and then into the ring, and prepare their position for and their abilities for being admitted by a pro organization. It takes time, but it's well worth it, believe me.
Has the sport changed in certain ways since you've been in it, either subtly or otherwise, since the 1980s when you began, or is it essentially the same game?
It's essentially the same game. The publication of it has changed. As you know, they're changing over now to another form of production on TV in terms of providing the fights. I remember back in the 60s, I used to watch Friday night fights, the Gillette fights, if you remember.
Yeah, we sure do.
With my father every Friday night. And that was in one of just the normal channels. I think it's changing in terms of what access we have to boxing, and for good or bad, it's just a different form today.
How about the fighters? Do you notice differences
between the fighters or fighters from yesteryear?
Over the past 30 years, have the fighters changed? Have they evolved? Are they different than they were?
I don't believe so. You know, fighters are fighters. They learn the same basic skills as I see it, and they give the same degree of effort in that ring, and to me, they're pretty much the same as in the past.
Vic, you were a football player, we read, and honorable mention while you played, and you were all-state defensive end, right? Did you have an opportunity to play in college?
I did. I showed up, it's kind of funny, I showed up to the office of the then head coach of the University of Nevada football team and told him that I wanted a scholarship, and he said, we'd like to have you, but we need to see you play first before we give you a scholarship. And I said, understandable. So I showed up on the first day of practice, and I looked around at the fellow football players, and I said, what am I, nuts? Turned back around and left and devoted my time to school because I had no business being on the same field with the guys that I saw in that weight room, believe me. It was the best decision I ever made.
Wow. And your dad, Duke Drakulich, was a high school football coach. What was it like playing for your father?
It was great. The great memories. Had a great time. He used to laugh. I was his right defensive end, weak side defensive end, at 130 to 135 pounds at 6'3". I think I showed my skills by my quickness, not by my force, and so we had some great times. Great times.
6'3", 135. Is that what you just said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Rather thin. I was able to, as you can well imagine, I was able to slip through the line, and that's why I got the accolades that I did. And I was just very, very fortunate. And having the opportunity to play for my father, it doesn't get any better than that. My dad was also the coach for my oldest brother, Damon, at Minogue High School. And Damon has the same feeling as my dad's passed. He passed away some time ago, and it's a great memory to have.
Yeah, really. We read your father was Siberian and your mother was Italian. Did they enforce some old world tendencies and traditions on you kids, or is there anything quirky, funny about your parents?
No, my dad at times could be rather strict, which was a Serbian way, and could definitely bring down the wrath of God on you if you got out of line. But it was the best. I needed it as a kid, believe me. I was a rabble-rouser, and so I needed a good, strong father, and I had it, and couldn't have gotten any better.
So how did you find your way into boxing and eventually become an official, a referee?
Well, it's strange. Some questions you posed to me previously about was it serendipitous? Yes, in a way it was. I graduated from law school back in 1979 and came back to Reno in order to practice. And I ran into a fellow that I knew from high school up at Hug High, Mike Martino. And you may recognize the name. Mike is very, very important with amateur boxing. He was the recent CEO or president, whatever the designation is, of USA Boxing, and had his office back in Colorado Springs. Mike was boxing at the time, and he knew by my reputation, my tendency to not formally box. I never put on the gloves. However, I did have to defend myself at times against his brethren in the fraternity system. And so he said, Vic, how would you like to work my corner for me? And I said, it'd be my pleasure. And at the time, he was working as a juvenile probation officer with my brother Damon here in Washoe County. I worked Mike's corner, and then when I was done working his corner, I had the amateur officials come up to me, and they said, look, when you're not working Mike's corner, would you like to help us out ringside with gloves, et cetera? And I said I would, and I did that. Then after a while, they said, how would you like to judge a few fights? And I said, that'd be great, any way I can help. So I started judging fights. And then after a year or so, they said, how would you like to get in the ring? And I said, and again, it would be my pleasure. So I got in the ring, and I've been, reffing the amateurs ever since. To this day, I still do the University of Nevada fights, and also the Wing Open for the Air Force Academy. Huh. You don't forget where you came. You don't forget where you came from.
Yeah.
So anyway, and Mike is still with the Nevada Athletic Commission. He's still a very close friend of mine, and life is good. I should say I got a call one day, and I believe it was 86, saying, look, we're looking for new officials for the Nevada Athletic Commission. And they said, are you interested? And I said, yes. And they knew I was a referee. But I was approached by the then supervisor for the Nevada Athletic Commission up here in Reno and said, look, we have enough referees. We need judges. And I said, well, whatever you need, be fine. I then took an exam over at a local middle school, might have been a junior high, called a junior high back then, but the principal, Sam Macias, came out and said hi to me, and as I was waiting to get a ride home, and said, what is it that you want to be? Sam at the time was with the Nevada Athletic Commission. And I said, well, Sam, I'd like to be a referee, but I've heard they have too many, and so I guess I'm going to be a judge. And he said, oh, heck, Vic, you ought to be what you want to be. And I said, Sammy, it's not my call. Shortly after that, I am at the World Boxing Championships that were taking place in Reno, and a fellow comes up to me and said, congratulations, you're new referee for the Nevada Athletic Commission. I said, no, I'm a judge. And he said, no, you're a referee. And I can only say that it was because of Sammy Macias that I became a referee as opposed to a judge, and that's exactly what I wanted to do.
Interesting.
How different is that view? When you're a judge, you're sitting right on the ring apron. When you're a ref, you're 3 feet away. How different is that?
It's not a lot different. there's things that I can see that they can't, and then the things that they can see sometimes that I can't because of our positioning. So it's pretty much the same, and it's just you have to, both as a judge and a referee, remain vigilant at all times. Things happen in a split second, and you have to make a split-second judgment, and you just hope that you're right, and you live with the decision. It's just...
Vic, let me ask you this question. I'm curious. I asked Jack Reese the same question. Back in the old days in boxing, the referee used to score fights. And that went away a number of years ago. Do you feel that would be something that boxing should try again, or are you okay with just judging or actually just refereeing the fight? Would it be too difficult, you think, to score and be the referee, or do you think maybe boxing, with some of the scoring controversies, might try something like going back to the way they used to do it?
No, I personally feel that a referee should do a referee's job, a judge should do a judge's job, and I don't think they should be mixed, especially in your bigger fights. You're just asking for trouble, and you're trying to focus on your calls, what you're going to do next, based upon previous action by these boxers. Some boxers continually engage in improper conduct in the ring, and you got to make a decision as to how you're going to handle it, and those are things that are going through your mind. Whereas a judge looks at one thing: scoring blows. So I really think going to just having the judges score bouts was the right thing to do.
Talking to referee Vic Drakulich on the Ringside Boxing Show. Vic, I think I counted 51 world title fights on your resume. You've been in the ring with world champions and Hall of Famers. What kind of experience is it to see fighters of that quality from just a few feet away?
It's exhilarating. It feels great because of the fact that you have the opportunity to be involved in a sport in which they have developed their skills, and these guys are fantastic in that ring. And it doesn't get any better than that. Is there a lot of pressure? You bet. You have, let's say down in Las Vegas, you have 18,000 screaming fans. Plus you have millions of people out there on TV that are watching you. And so you're under the limelight. I mean, there is pressure, but it's something that I would not give up for the world.
The Nevada Commission wants us to avoid asking you about any specific fights that you've officiated in terms of, I guess talking about those specifically. But you've refed some big ones. You've had 3 world title fights with Manny Pacquiao, 3 involving Oscar De La Hoya. You did the ESPN's 2009 Fight of the Year between Juan Manuel Marquez and Juan Diaz. Do the nerves get bigger before a big fight that's on national TV? Do they get bigger for you?
But when you say, I'm sorry, the nerves get bigger?
Yeah. Are you more nervous before a huge fight than you would be, just doing an undercard fight? Oh,
yes. It goes with the territory. When you know you're going to be under the limelight with the main event, there's considerable pressure. I cannot deny that. But it keeps you at the top of your game by virtue of having that additional pressure. Things happen in that ring, like I said, so quickly that you make a call, you got to live with your call, and you just hope that call is right. And there's times when I've made calls, and it's like it's not what I saw, but what I didn't see in terms of was it a low blow, was it trailing down a bit, or what have you. And I'm vindicated upon reviewing the tape later. But like I said, you don't. And one thing that's come up that I think is going to be good is there's a move towards relying upon available video and audio ringside, because some things happen where you might be in a position where you just quite don't see it. It's on the other side. And to have the modern technology as a backup is excellent. And so I think they should do more of that.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, you refed or judged fights involving Roy Jones and Lennox Lewis and Jose Luis Castillo and Floyd Mayweather and Shane Mosley. Dang, Vic, the list goes on, of course. What fighter of those or another fighter that I didn't mention made your jaw drop like,
wow, that is just an incredible talent.
They're all on the same level to me. Floyd Mayweather, to me, is one of the slickest boxers I've ever been in the ring with. Extremely talented. The list would go on in terms of Manny Pacquiao, just tough, and able to defend themselves and deliver hard punches, and it's been a blessing to me to say that I've reffed those individuals, because they're all great. They truly are.
Yeah, they are. Okay, here's a favorite question for us. We love to ask the referees these when we have them on. We've had quite a few on. When you're that close to the action, what do you see and hear that the rest of us don't?
A lot of times I can hear the impact of the punch. I can hear sometimes they'll jaw at each other, say little things, and I'll hear it. And unless it gets real out of hand, I'm going to let them go, you see things when in terms of when a fighter goes down and we apply a count and we have to make a decision as referees as to whether or not this fight should be allowed to continue. We see it in their eyes. We see it in their gestures when we ask them to walk to us. You see it in their steps. Just small things that you wouldn't see out there as a general spectator, but you see in the ring that are important because of the fact that they all contribute towards your making the final decision, should this fight be allowed to go on. And sometimes it's a very close call.
Is it real different for you to referee a fight between two huge guys compared to, say, a bantamweight fight?
Well, it depends. The huge guys don't have the quickness that the smaller weights have. But, and so as a result, they're easier to see the punches, generally. But also, they can be more difficult by virtue of when you have to break them up. And they can be hard to pull apart sometimes. They're big guys. And so it goes both ways. They all have their own special characteristics. But size does weigh in terms of, breaking them up and maneuvering them when you're inside that ring.
What's usually more physical for you, chasing the little guys or trying to break up the big guys? What wears you out more?
I would say breaking up the big guys. Because in moving with the little guys, my approach is trying my best to stay 90-degree angle to them. So I'm right in the middle. And also staying to the open side. And by that, I mean when you have boxers that are of different style. One is a southpaw, and the other is an orthodox fighter. You have an open side to those fighters. A good referee, a trained referee, will try to do his best to stay on that open side because that is where you see 90% of the action.
What fight was it that, Vic? What fight was it that I was watching that both guys kept switching on you, left to right?
No, that happens quite a bit, and all of a sudden I'll take a look and go, "What happened to that open side? I thought it was on the other side." It's just they will do that. They will try to throw each other off, which is a great maneuver. Great maneuver, because when you parry punches, it depends upon, you have in your mindset, am I dealing with an orthodox fighter? And so you'll parry punch, and you know what I mean by parry punches. Use your gloves to deflect punches. And when a guy switches on you, now you have emphasis on another side, and you've got to, as a fighter, you have to realize, oh wait, he just changed on me. Well, it's the same thing with the referee. These fighters will go from an orthodox to a southpaw to an orthodox, and you have to, in your mind, make a determination as to, based upon their current situation, what is the best place to be in terms of seeing all that you can see with regards to the interaction in that ring.
It's unique, though, when they're both doing it, isn't it? I mean, we don't see that very often. And you
don't see that. Usually it's one fighter that's usually trying to change the stance. Yeah.
You had one like that where they were both switching. That's one I'm kind of remembering somehow. I think it was a guy from Africa and somebody else. I can't remember. That's all right. Go ahead. Go ahead, John.
Okay. How much nerve, Vic, does it take to, thinking about the big guys you were talking about, where they're difficult to separate or to push them back during a tough fight? How much nerve does it take to step between these two guys when they're slugging it out at the bell?
You just got to do what you got to do. That's what we're there for. And if they're slugging out, you've got to get in between. You've got to say, yell stop and get in between them. And it can get hairy sometimes. But that's what we're paid to do. That's what we're hired to do. And is there potential danger in a way to it? Yes, there is. There's no question about that. But basically what you do in the course of the fight is you establish your command in that ring by virtue of primarily your vocal skills. And mine, I sometimes overdo it at the local gym here when I referee the University of Nevada fighters because I say, break, and I mean I could break eardrums. Well, I basically have to do that in a pro fight, especially a big-time pro fight, because the sound of the crowd is so loud. I've got to make sure these guys hear me, and so I'm very, very loud in my instructions, believe me.
Yeah. So I have to ask the follow-up question. Have you ever been hit when you were doing something like that or whatever in the ring?
I have. I remember one occasion I got hit. I stepped in and said, stop, when I heard the bell go off. And the one fighter threw a punch and then hit me on my right arm near my bicep, almost by the elbow joint. And I turned to him and I said, listen for that bell. And he was very nice. He said, I'm sorry. And I said, no problem. And he went back. I'm thinking, hey, I can take those punches all day. That was no big thing. Until I woke up the next morning. And my arm felt like somebody hit me with a sledgehammer. So, at the time it was okay. Later on I felt the pain. But like I said, it's just part of the job.
This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responte. We are talking to one of the outstanding referees in boxing, Vic Drakulich from Reno, California. You've actually done several fights in Reno, Nevada. You've actually done several fights in Japan. How different is that experience?
It's different in that how would I say? The crowd is more staid. It's more formal. It's different from the fact that I'm refereeing people that I don't speak the same language with. Mm-hmm. And in fact, what I do is I like to, if I've got a fighter of a particular nationality that speaks a different language, I like to speak their language when I'm in the ring to the extent that I can. And so what I do is I prepare like my instructions. When I have a Latino fighter and he doesn't speak English, I will go through, just give you an example. I'll say any punches below this point will be called low. Golpes debajo de este punto ser llamado bajo. And then I say, obey my commands, protect yourselves at all times. Obedezca mis comandos y protegerse a su mismo siempre. Touch them out now, tokenlos. Boom. And I had a chief second look at me one time when I did that. And he said, thank you. And I said, it's my pleasure. Because it gives them, it makes it so that they feel a little bit more at ease with me as a referee being fair in that ring. Japanese, I don't speak much Japanese, but the one thing I learned was punch below this point is going to be called low. Kokuga, low blow. Kokuga, low blow. So I use that when I'm over there, and I use both languages because most of the time the fighters that come over to fight the Japanese champions are Latino fighters. So, but it's a very great experience. I go over, Mr. Honda, the primary promoter over there, treats me like royalty. They're very respectful. You don't get much better experience. I just came back from there 2 weeks ago. I just did a world title fight for the WBC back there. And it was a great experience. It really was.
Go ahead, John.
Let me see. I want to ask you about, because you're an attorney, Vic, this is an interesting question. I want to ask you about preparing for a fight. You're obviously, attorneys are analytical people, and I'm sure you are. And how analytical are you when you're getting ready to do a big fight as a ref? What type of things do you do, both physically and mentally, to prepare for an assignment, especially a big, high-profile fight?
what I try to do is I try to get together with some of the other officials, ask them what are your experiences with either fighters, anything that I should watch out for. Sometimes you can go on the internet and look at things and find out, is there anything in the background that I should know. I prepare my instructions well before getting in the ring. I go over and over them in my mind. I try to let them know when I get to the arena and I go into the dressing room, try to establish a rapport, letting them know that I'm going to be nothing but fair, but I call a tight ship, and that's what I'm going to expect, and basically just go ahead with a fight after. It's more of a mental preparation of concentrating, going through my mind. If this happens, what am I going to do? If this happens, how am I going to handle it? And just going through the process so that if it does happen, it's almost can be almost mechanical, and that you know what you need to do, you know what to call, you know how to handle it. It's just nothing but preparation.
Do you warm up before a fight physically? Do you prepare like that? Do you stretch at all?
I'll stretch, take a nice hot shower, shave up, and what have you. Stretch my legs. Just generally limbering up. And as we get older, we gotta stretch those muscles more than we used to. You know what I mean?
You got that right.
Yes, sure do.
You've been there back, huh?
John, well, I'm going to turn 66, and John's 60. So yeah, we're there.
When do you turn 60? When do you turn 66?
March 16th.
I'm February 10th.
Oh, okay.
I'll be right ahead of you.
I'm getting my Social Security this year, so I'm excited about that. As long as the government's open, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Hey, as a ref, you got fighters who are they've dedicated their lives toward being successful in this moment in the ring, and they're counting on you to give them every opportunity to come out successful and advance their career, make a better life for themselves and their families. But more importantly, it's up to you to protect them in the ring and make sure they don't get seriously hurt. How difficult is that at times to balance?
It can be very difficult at times, and at other times not difficult at all. Sometimes I'll watch other referees, and when they stop, and I'll take a look at it and say, I agree with that, I don't agree with that. And the reason I do it in my mind is because I want to make sure that in my mind, things that I see are properly used for determining the outcome of that fight. As you said, these guys prepare. I mean, their whole life is dependent upon that one call.
Yep.
And so you want to make the call in their best interest, but at the same time, you want to know that, hey, one punch too many can result in serious injury. And so with that going, it's just a weighing schedule. There's nothing concrete that you say. It's just a matter of looking at them. And I talk to them, hey, come on, walk to me. Feeling okay? Yeah. You ready to go? Yeah. If I don't get a good, strong response, there's a greater likelihood that I'm going to call that fight. And I tell them in dressing room, if I'm questioning you and have you walk to me, I want you to let me know you're okay, because you've got to sell yourself. You've got to let me know. And so you just give it the best shot. You got 30 some odd years of experience, and you just make the best call you can and hope that it's right,
Yeah, and John and I have talked about this at length in the last few weeks, but when a fighter like Adonis Stevenson or Magomed Abdusalamov gets seriously hurt in the ring, it understandably has a big emotional impact on the guy who refereed the fight. And we're wondering, as a member of that brotherhood, does it weigh on you when you see something like that happen from a distance, even though you weren't part of that specific event? Is it natural to think, wow, that could have been me, and I don't think I would have? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to follow on what you said, but for the, for this happening, God has protected me up till now. I haven't had something like that happen to me, and I am so blessed to be able to say that because I've seen guys get injured, and I've seen where it could be attributed to the referee's late call, and could be attributed to that's just the nature of boxing. it is a tough sport. And, whether I'm refereeing pro or I'm refereeing the local Nevada boxers here, I keep in the back of my mind, I've got to make sure they are not hurt, that they, get to carry on in life. This is not the only thing that's going to happen in their life. And you've got to make your decision. The pros, you let it go further than you would amateur because, like you said, that's their livelihood. And if you make a premature call, you might be somewhat destroying their livelihood, and that's something that weighs on you as well. It's just something that we take with us in the ring, and there's just no way around it. We're hired to make that call, and we make it the best of our ability.
Do you find yourself lying in bed at night, second-guessing yourself sometimes?
Oh, all the time. Or just reviewing it and saying, no, that was the right call. I've had situations where I've made a call, fighter goes down, I make the call as a knockdown, and there is a claim that it was a low blow, by virtue of the way the boxer reacts to it. I go, I didn't see low blow, I'm going with the knockdown, called knockdown, fight's over. And as I'm picking up the scorecards, I kind of take a peek up the replay up on this and go, got it. You know what I mean? You just kind of, you look and say, yes, I was right, absolutely right. But it's, for that moment, it's scary because sometimes it's a very, very close call.
Yeah, Vic, every good referee that I've seen over the last so many years has a procedure they go through to decide whether to stop a fight or let a fight continue. What is your routine when you're deciding whether to stop a fight or to let it go?
I know there are referees that have them walk one way than the other and what have you. I don't employ that. One of the criticisms of that, we're going to have a referee seminar tomorrow, by the way, down in Las Vegas, and going to be headed by Jay Nady. We're going to discuss things like that. The problem you have with that, you can be a disadvantage to the other boxer because you're giving that fighter more time. Okay, when sometimes to the point of not being fair. The approach that I employ is fighter goes down, I start to count, I watch him. As soon as the only thing touching the mat is the soles of his shoes, I consider him up, and I stop at that point at the count of 8, and then I take a look at him, have him quick walk to me, take a look at him, ask him maybe a question or two, and start that fight immediately. Because there's two things. There's safety of that boxer, also there's a fairness to the other boxer issue. And so those are the things you put all together in making the final determination of how you're going to handle it.
Interesting. After a really important fight, Vic, and a tough one, are you physically tired and mentally? Yeah, I could say that. Yeah, I can get tired in that ring after 12 rounds of pulling and pushing and also having the stress of making decisions based upon what you see. It can wear away at you a little bit, but not to the point that I'm totally fatigued. But it wears on you. It can wear on you, no question about it. That's why you have to stay in shape. I like going down to the gym. I like working out. I like doing the treadmill, the elliptical. I ski. I'm an avid skier, and so these are things that help me stay in shape. And even though I'm hitting 66 in a month, I'm able to get back in that ring and do my job.
It's a Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California, talking to referee Vic Drakulich. This is something that we wonder about a lot. When HIV and AIDS first became as a thing worldwide, and none of us knew very much about it, what kind of impact did that have on guys like you as a referee who are working just a few feet away where the blood and sweat flies? Were you worried?
That's a good question. I never really let it enter my mind. It is something that we're potentially exposed to. A lot of referees wear the rubber gloves. I don't. I just don't feel comfortable with the rubber gloves on. But it's something that's in your back of your mind. It's only natural that it would be, but it really doesn't prevent me from doing my job. It's just one of the potential hazards of the game, I guess you could say.
I read an article that said that you've only DQ'd 3 boxers in your entire pro career. Is that accurate? Is that true?
Well, actually, I remember one. The other two, I don't have any independent recollection of, to be honest with you. But it could have happened over the last 30 years. Yeah, I don't. It's very few and far between that I will. That's the last resort that I ever want to take is DQ a boxer. But when a boxer is engaging in what I would refer to as illicit conduct in that ring, and will not heed my warnings or my admonishments, he's looking. I'll tell him, I'll DQ you. Don't test me because I will do it. And I tell boxers, look at I am not adverse to DQing a boxer. If you continue on with improper conduct, I will not put up with it. And it's only right because it's not fair for the other boxer to take that kind of treatment, unprofessional and unsportsmanlike treatment. I'm just not going to allow that to happen.
So what's the dirtiest thing you've seen in an amateur or pro fight that you can tell us about that one fighter did to another, Vic? Just curious.
Well, I guess it would be in a fight that I had in Japan. And before I went to this interview, I walked down into my basement, my man cave as I refer to it, and looked at the poster of the fight to get the names of the two fighters. The posters I have of it are in Japanese, so I can't give you the names. Lucky for me. In the event, the one fighter they would fall to the ground, and then the champion got up and took a punch at the fighter who was down. I naturally took a point away from him. What I didn't see, because I was in the process of pulling them apart, is the fighter that was down was taking his thumb and shoving it into the eye of the champion.
Wow.
And then there were things being said by his corner, such as telling him to engage in illicit conduct, grab on him, do that, But I didn't, obviously, it's in Japanese. I don't know what that's being said, all right? Since that time, the fight went to its ultimate conclusion. The champion still won. But the corner, and I don't know if they've ever been allowed back in, but they were expelled from Japanese boxing after that fight. But he was in a position where it was really slick because as I'm trying to pull them one off of the other's taking his thumb and pushing up, and I did not see that. And so it makes it very, very difficult. But those are the difficult situations you find yourself in sometimes. You can only call what you see.
Yeah. I got to ask you something here. Just as a fan who was watching Tyson Holyfield, when I saw Tyson bite Holyfield's ear off, I thought, okay, that's a DQ right now. That's the fight's got to be over, and it wasn't. I've talked to other referees. They said, he made the right call. Would you have DQ'd Tyson at that moment?
It's a Nevada fight, a very prominent Nevada fight that I think I probably should stay away from.
Okay.
And it's you have Mills Lane, one of the greatest referees of all time, making a very, very difficult call. Yeah. It could have gone either way. If you remember, Mills was actually going to DQ him at one, in that first instance. And then conversation with Mark Ratner, and the decision was made to allow the fight to go on. And then they had the second fight, and as Mills said, the first one was a picnic, the other one was a meal or something like that. I can't remember what he said. He was always good for a great quote. But, that's a tough call because you have people who paid an immense amount of money to see that fight. The place is packed, and all of a sudden, boom, you step in there and stop that fight. That's one of those calls that you hope you never have to make. And I can only say that I learned from the best. I learned watching Mills, and I would sit ringside. I remember Mark Ratner, who told me that, look at his predecessor, that, hey, you're not supposed to be ringside here when I just started out. And I said, I want to learn. And I sat ringside to watch Mills and his movements and his calls and everything else. And they finally said, you're right. So they allowed me to sit ringside, and you couldn't get better training. So that's a tough call, and one that you get a 50% one way and 50% the other.
Okay. Yeah. The WBC named you as Referee of the Year in 2010, Vic. Why was that such a great year for you?
You know, I don't think it was different from any other year that I had with the WBC. That was the former president, now deceased Jose Suleiman, and his son Mauricio is now at the head. But it wasn't any different. It was just and I feel honored to have been recognized. It wasn't for just that year; it was for all the years that I had been with the WBC up to that point. And it's been a great time with that organization, and I'm still with them, and the North American Boxing Federation as well, which is kind of the regional, portion of the WBC, and I have no regrets in joining that organizations. It's been great.
You know, when a fighter is starting to show signs of fading, we can usually see it in their reflexes and their stamina, things like that. What goes on a ref? When does he start to fade?
You know, that's a very good question. I'm at age 66 now. I'm watching myself very, very closely. It's a call that we all have to make. I'll have to make it, in the next few years, is to look at, am I the same referee that I was 10 years ago? And if not, why not? And is it time for me to call it a career? It's just you have to be honest with yourself, and I hope that I am in the future in determining at what point do I cease being a boxing referee.
How much fun is it? How much fun is it to do what you do?
It's exhilarating. It can be very fun. It can be very trying. You have both ends of the spectrum in terms of great fight, the fight that I just did recently 2 weeks ago in Japan. It was a flyweight title, light flyweight title, and went great. 12 rounds. The Japanese fighter retained his title. It felt great, and then when I got out of the ring, I got adulation from people who are watching, and they agreed with every one of my calls, and it feels good. Now, you can have another situation, the other end of the spectrum, where things are going wrong, and you're trying to make the best call, and people are going back and forth. It's just like I said, both ends of the spectrum. You can go from great to not so great, or even bad, depending upon what happens in that ring.
Just a few questions left for Vic Drakulich, 2010 Referee of the Year. Vic, you've been an attorney in Nevada for a number of years. What attracted you to law?
That's a good question. From the start, going to the University of Nevada, Reno, I went pre-law in my application, and I don't know why, but I did, and I stuck with it, and I went on to McGeorge School of Law. My claim to fame is I used to, after I got done taking constitutional law class at McGeorge, I then tutored in it for students that followed behind me for the professor. The professor was Anthony Kennedy, who later became U.S. Supreme Court Justice. Yes.
My God.
That's my claim to fame. I tell everybody that. What the hell? I might as well use it.
Sure.
But in any event, so I enjoyed my years at McGeorge, and I came back here to practice, and I had good results. And now I have maybe one client left that I enjoy going down and having a cup of coffee and signing documents, and then getting to go home and doing what I enjoy most. And it's been a great career,
Well, speaking of good results, I read that you once got a $22.4 million verdict for a client. What was that day like for you?
Well, I anticipated it. I told my wife as I was going through the trial, my wife Linda, I said, I'm going to hit him for over $20 million. And she said, yeah, we call each other Kiddo. She goes, Kiddo, you're good at what you do, but $22 million? And I said, watch me. And even though I anticipated it, it still was like a shot. Like, did it just happen? Is this a dream? Did I do what I said I was going to do? And what it involved is that I don't want to take up too much time, but a fellow that I worked with out at a metallurgical company back when I was going through college, and he had his house ransacked. And while he was out visiting relatives in California, and he made application for the damages, and his total loss was $15,000, and they paid him $12,000. And what turned me onto the case is somebody said, this is not, one of the adjusters said, this isn't the first time I ran into this with this company, which kind of perked my antennas up a bit, my legal antennas, so to speak. And I started investigating, and I found other people that had been similarly treated. And then I went and took a deposition, and I said to whoever's testifying from the company, I said, look at how many claims does your company handle a year? And the person said, I don't know. And I said, could it be 1 million claims? And, yeah, it could be 1 million. I knew they were overstating it. They were trying to, make it look like he was a small potato. And I said, could it be more than 1 million? And he said, yeah, it could be more than 1 million. And I said, would it be accurate to say that the manner in which you handled Mr. Hire, the plaintiff's case was similar to the 1 million or so other people? It's like, do you still beat your wife kind of question. And the person said yes. So what I argued to the jury, I said, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the evidence of not only this individual, but other witnesses who come in and testified, it's not a one-shot thing. This is going on, and unless you do something about it, it's going to continue. Let's give they, by their own testimony, handle 1 million claims or more a year. Let's put a $20 savings on that. That's $20 million that they profit. The jury followed my argument and gave me approximately $22.5 million. The Nevada Supreme Court reduced it down to $6 million. But it was still a good hit, and taught that company a lesson as well as other companies. They take heed, believe me, when they see the potential liability for improper conduct in handling claims. They perk up real quick. So it was a great event. I've had some others, and I've enjoyed the practice of law, but I am also enjoying retirement from the practice of law.
I bet, yeah. Well, hey, as the parent of a U.S. Army JAG officer, I got to ask you this: is it different arguing in front of the Nevada Supreme Court? Are the butterflies big when you do that, or is it just another day in court?
No, the butterflies are real big. Believe me, because you have a panel of judges that are at the top of their game. They've reviewed your points and authorities in the legal argument and the factual basis for your claim, and they pepper you. They ask questions. They, what about this? What about that? What about this? And you have to bing, bing, bang, and be responsive. And they can get your attention very quick. Believe me.
Huh. If the White House called and wanted you to become part of that team to defend Trump, what would you say?
my pleasure.
Really?
We won't even go there because we can go on and on.
Okay.
But I'll tell you right out. I'm conservative, and and I think things are getting very interesting. And there's a lot to be unearthed. I think anybody that did anything wrong, I don't care who they are, they've got to answer for it. But what my feeling is there's been people on the other side of the ledger who have not answered for their transgressions, and it irritates me, to be honest with you. So, not getting too political, I love talking. I love over a cup of coffee, and but it's going to be interesting. Believe me, I'm just watching it day to day here.
Yeah.
So,
yes, it is.
In any event.
Absolutely. Well, John and I are both junkies for that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So, hey, very last question for you, Vic, then we'll let you go. In 2014, you were diagnosed with a real rare form of abdominal cancer. What's the latest on that? How's your health today?
Well, I'm glad that you asked. It was appendiceal cancer. What had happened back in I noticed the development, which caused me to go to a doctor, and they did some tests on me, and I was told in June, I believe, of 2013 that I had 3 years to live. An appendiceal cancer is an extremely rare form of cancer. Because of my involvement with boxing, I got a call from one of the boxing judges up north who said, have you called this individual who's with the Nevada Athletic Commission, who has a special tie with MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas? And I said no, because I didn't want to lean on anybody. But he goes, he's rather strong in opinions, and he goes, Vic, call him now. I said, okay, back off, I'll call him. Well, I ended up calling this individual who in turn called the hospital, and within one day I got a call back from the head doctor at MD Anderson. I was admitted to MD Anderson. They diagnosed my condition. I told him when he first called me, he said, Vic, we got to get you down here right away. And I said, well, let me tell you, doctor, I've been told I have 3 years to live. And he said, Vic, don't put your headstone up yet. We got a lot of great stuff down here. Well, I went down. I went through an initial surgery where they removed my appendix, and subsequent examination revealed that there was still evidence of cancer in my abdominal cavity. So then they did a full surgery, and when I woke up, I'll never forget this, a nurse from Uganda said, as I woke up, she goes, you had the mother of all surgeries. And I said, really? Just coming from somebody at MD Anderson. And I said, really? She said, yes, you had a very lethal form of cancer. And I said, well, I didn't think it was lethal. I thought it was very slow growing. She goes, that's why it's so lethal. From what I've since learned is that normally people don't notice it until it's too late. I thank God every day that I had the opportunity to detect the problem, go in there. I had this major surgery. I've been going down ever since. In fact, I go back on the 23rd of this month for further examination. But thus far, they think they've got it. And so, like I said, every day I thank God for the blessing I have of still being here and being in the ring. It's amazing. In fact, I was just at an NABF conference here in Reno, ran into a fellow who started talking about cancer, and I said, well, I'm a cancer patient. And he said, really, what kind of cancer? And I said, appendiceal cancer. And he looked at me, and it's like he just saw a ghost. And he said, I've never heard of anybody surviving appendiceal cancer. And I go, whoa, it sent chills down my spine. So, yeah, it's been a trek. It's been a trek, but very interesting. And I like I said, I count my blessings. Why God gave me that advance warning, I don't know, but I'm not asking any questions. Just going with the flow. So.
Right on.
Wow. Fantastic. Vic Drakulich, Esquire, is a Nevada barrister. He's also one of boxing's best-known referees. 560 fights, including more than 50 world title fights over 3 decades in the sport. Vic, hey, it's been a great pleasure talking to you today. Thanks for giving us so much of your time on the Ringside Boxing Show, and happy birthday next month, buddy.
Thank you, and same to you as well in March.
Hey, thank you.
All right.
Whoever
I'm talking to here. Okay.
Vic Drakulich.
Pleasure
Vic.
talking. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Our pleasure. Okay. Hey, do you like this? Do you like the Ringside Boxing Show? Do us a solid. Tell your boxing friends. Spread the word about us on your social media and help us grow. Also, if you haven't yet discovered the #1 website in the world for daily boxing news, what are you waiting for? We update ringsideboxingshow.com 365 days a year with the hottest stories and biggest headlines every single day. And if you're a fight fan, this should be your first stop every morning, and it might be the only boxing website you need to visit all day. Discover us right now and be amazed. ringsideboxingshow.com. Thanks, as always, to our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahi, and my partner here, John J. Risponti, our outstanding British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, and another huge thank you to Nevada referee Vic Drakulich, one of the best in the sport. Finally, we appreciate you, Ringside Nation, for being a part of our worldwide audience today. Keep your chin tucked, and we will talk to you again next week on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Well, it's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass. It's a bad day, so you better get off of my back. You might get cold cocked if you cross my path. It's a great day